Picture this. It's the classic scene in Disney's Pinocchio where Jiminy Cricket is trying to convince Pinocchio to go to school. He's acting as his conscience, trying to keep the puppet on the straight and narrow. But instead of telling a white lie or being a little mischievous, instead of acting all wide-eyed and innocent the way we expect, Pinocchio picks up a hammer, throws it at Jiminy Cricket, and smashes him against the wall. Jiminy Cricket is dead. Can you imagine if that's what happened in this scene? How different Pinocchio would feel as a story? Murdering Jiminy would change the whole vibe, right? So, imagine my surprise when I read the original Pinocchio story from 1883 and watched this exact version of the scene play out in the text. Quote, Pinocchio sprang to his feet in a fury and, seizing a wooden mallet from the counter, flung it at the talking cricket. Maybe he didn't even mean to hit him. But unfortunately, it just so happened he got him right on the head. The poor cricket had barely enough breath to go chirp, 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 and then was left there, stone dead, stuck to the wall. Sounds weird out of context, but this isn't an isolated occurrence. There is an absurd amount of violence in the original story. The author, Carlo Collodi, pulled no punches when he was writing this thing. We get to see Pinocchio hung from a tree and slowly suffocate to death. We see him devoured to the bone by fish. We watch his feet burn off, his legs get broken. There's even a part where a funeral procession of black rabbits appear out of nowhere to take him away to the underworld. The whole story is full of this stuff. It's less like a Disney movie and more like a series of unfortunate events. Something about it is almost haunting. I can't stop thinking about it. I mean, everyone knows Pinocchio, but how many people will ever know this version of it? It feels lost. I sort of have to tell you about it, otherwise I don't think I'm ever getting it out of my head. So, here we are. I've done my best to prepare you for what you're about to hear. I hope you're ready. I present you The Many Deaths of Pinocchio. Okay, really quick, I just want to share something with you that I'm really proud of. This is how we here at Foundry imagine the infamous King in Yellow to look. This is an actual original piece of art created by our very own artist, Owen Norton. The reason I want to show it to you here is because I think it also says something about the absurdity of art. See the gilded antlers, the floating crown, the flowing tasseled robes, skeletons crowded within. There's just something so resonant about this figure and about how artists are so drawn to it. We just had to try and capture that. And you could capture it too. We have prints available at thetalefoundry.com/store. They're only $20 each, and every one you buy helps us make these videos. Again, just visit thetalefoundry.com/store to get yours. I can't promise you won't go mad looking at it. It's just a risk you'll have to take. Now, back to the video. Pinocchio's very first words in the book are cries of pain. See, he didn't start out as a puppet, and he was never magically brought to life. He was already alive, ever since he was just a block of wood. He can feel the axe striking into him and begs not to be cut. Unfortunately for him, the violence is just getting started. As I said, there is a lot in store for this puppet. It's hard to feel too bad for him though, because Pinocchio is an absolute menace, right from the start. Like, right from the start. The second Geppetto paints him some eyes, Pinocchio just stares at him, creepily. The second he has a mouth, he sticks his tongue out at Geppetto. He gets arms and uses them to steal Geppetto's wig. He gets legs and kicks him in the nose. And as soon as he can walk, he dashes out the door and into the world outside. Geppetto, understandably, finally loses his temper. He chases after Pinocchio, yelling at him. But none of the onlookers have ever seen a living puppet before. As far as they can tell, Geppetto is just a cruel old man abusing his innocent child. And so, he gets arrested, leaving Pinocchio to navigate his first few days of life as a puppet alone. I'm not going to lie, I was kind of bewildered here. I wasn't expecting it to be 100% like the Disney movie or even Del Toro's version. Both of those Pinocchios are, sweet, adorable. Mischievous, maybe, but not straight up obnoxious. Collodi's Pinocchio? I'd call that his defining character trait at the start of the story. It's kind of shocking how awful he is. But there's a tenderness there too, a childish innocence that makes him just as lovable as he is immature. Despite everything, he recognizes that his father really does love him and he wants to make him proud. So, as soon as his father is out of jail, he decides he'll be a good boy and go to school. Geppetto, being extremely poor, literally sells the coat off his back to buy Pinocchio a schoolbook. For just a moment, it seems that Pinocchio is getting a handle on himself, learning not to be so impulsive. Until he sees something that looks like fun. An advertisement for a puppet show. Almost immediately after he leaves for school, he sells the book so he can go to the theater. And, almost immediately, the puppet master kidnaps him. Unlike the versions you might be familiar with, the puppet master doesn't see him as some sort of wonder. To him, Pinocchio isn't a magical puppet that can sing and dance. No, he's firewood. Just before he's chopped into pieces, Pinocchio manages to put on such a show of humility and fear, the puppet master takes pity on him. In the end, he lets Pinocchio go, with 5 gold coins in his pocket for Geppetto. The puppeteer was a scary guy, but the next characters Pinocchio encounters are downright evil, probably the cruelest he comes across in the entire story. The Fox and Cat. Just as Pinocchio leaves the theater, they catch wind of his precious gold coins and hatch a plot to steal them. Unsurprisingly, Pinocchio falls for the scam. For the second time, he abandons his plans to go to school. He follows the Fox and Cat into yet another trap. After some hijinks, we'll call them, the two manage to lull him to a sense of trust and safety. At which point, they just murder him outright. I was expecting him to make some daring escape, as he had several times before. But that is not the story Collodi is telling here. The Fox and Cat string Pinocchio up in the tallest oak tree. They wait for him to suffocate. 3 hours later, he's still kicking and screaming. Night falls. They get tired of waiting and leave. Pinocchio is still there, alone, dying his slow puppet death. This is going to sound really weird, but a lot of scholars compare Pinocchio to Jesus Christ. And there's a strange amount of evidence for that connection, which I guess would make this scene the Crucifixion of Pinocchio. His life slowly draining, Pinocchio cries out to his father, "Oh, Papa, if only you were here." But his creator does not hear his pleas. Pinocchio twitches, shudders, and at last dies. Collodi originally planned to end the story there. If not for his editors and his loyal audience of children, that would have been the ultimate fate of this beloved character, a crucifixion story without the resurrection. From his first cries of pain on the carpenter's workbench to his untimely, brutal demise, it seems Pinocchio was always destined for violence. By now, assuming you've recovered from all that, I'm assuming you have some questions. What about the blue fairy? What about the part where Pinocchio is swallowed by a whale or turns into a donkey? What about his quest to become a real boy? Many of the most famous parts of the Pinocchio story don't even come until the second half, which Collodi wasn't even planning to write. It's also where the story becomes a little less chaotic, a little less slapstick, and a little more structured. It acquires a much deeper sense of morality. It starts back at the gallows tree. The fairy makes her first real appearance, ordering her posse of animal helpers to cut Pinocchio down and take him into her house. Although Pinocchio experienced all the trauma of death, he's a puppet. Of course, a hanging didn't actually kill him. So she nurses him back to health, and their relationship begins. At first, she appears in the form of a little girl, calling herself his sister. At a later point in the story, she takes the form of an adult woman, more of a mother figure. This gives Pinocchio a sort of epiphany. He realizes he can't grow up. He's stuck as a puppet boy for as long as he lives. Puppets never grow up, the fairy tells him. They're born as puppets, they live as puppets, and they die as puppets. And so, after dying as a puppet one too many times, Pinocchio decides he doesn't want to be a child forever. He wants to become a man and grow up. With this new purpose in mind, Pinocchio does his best to become more educated, responsible, and hardworking. After a long time, the fairy decides he's ready. He can become a real boy. His grueling journey of self-actualization will finally come to an end. But at the end of that same chapter, Collodi reminds us of a painful truth that the story proves over and over again. Quote, "In the lives of puppets, there's always a but that ruins everything." That but comes in the form of Pinocchio's friend Lampwick, who invites him to go to the land of toys. That is something you probably remember from the Disney movie. It's a trap. A place where little boys who don't follow the rules turn into donkeys. Even in Disney's watered-down telling, it's still a pretty traumatic thing to watch. So, you can imagine how much worse it is in the book. Once he becomes a donkey, and he actually does fully become a donkey in the original book, Pinocchio is sold to the circus, where he's forced to perform until he breaks his leg. Now damaged goods, he's sold to a man who wants to skin him to use his hide for a drum. When the man tries to drown him to get the process started, the fish in the water frenzy around him and eat his skin off his bones. But he's a puppet. He doesn't have bones, just a wooden body hidden under all that meat and fur, the same one that has again and again refused to die. He's back to his old self. You may have noticed that Geppetto has been conspicuously absent from this half of the story. Shortly after the fairy saved Pinocchio, Geppetto disappeared at sea, searching for his missing son. The assumption was that he'd been eaten, because these waters belong to the terrible dogfish, a giant sea monster as big as a mountain. And now, as Pinocchio's swimming to shore, the dogfish appears and swallows him whole too. It's in the belly of the beast that he finally reunites with his father, who's been starving there for nearly 2 years at this point. After everything he's been through, Pinocchio is wiser now, less selfish, compassionate even. He offers to swim his father to shore, and if it's written in the heavens that we must die, he says, at least we'll have the immense consolation of dying in each other's arms. Kind of a wild thing to hear this puppet say after everything, but sure, why not? This courageous act of responsibility is what finally sets Pinocchio on the path to becoming a real boy. He rescues Geppetto and spends the next several months nursing his father back to health. He works hard to earn food for both of them and doesn't even get distracted once. And then, after what seems like an eternity of tireless labor, it happens. One morning, at last, he wakes up in a human body. A good ending for Pinocchio, absolutely. He got what he wanted. But what really strikes me about this second half of the story is that despite his concerted effort to be deserving of this final outcome, his journey is more violent, if anything. Almost like the act of having his wish granted and the inevitability of his suffering are somehow connected. It would be easy to dismiss The Adventures of Pinocchio as some weird, archaic story written to make children behave. Collodi isn't exactly subtle with the lessons he's trying to teach, things like respect your parents or stay in school. But I can't help but feel like there's a reason for this story's staying power, something a little less prescriptive. Pinocchio was originally published in Giornali per i Bambini, a children's magazine from 1881 to 1883. Many of the children who would have been readers would be all too familiar with death. Italy had a very high infant mortality rate. Collodi himself lost 5 of his 9 siblings before he was 7 years old. If real boys got sick or starved or were attacked by thieves, they didn't always survive, like Pinocchio. Death is everywhere in this story. Pinocchio survives a hanging, drowning, being swallowed by a sea monster. I didn't even tell you about the part where the fox and the cat try to stab him in the kidneys. Everything he suffers would have killed a normal boy, but he's not a normal boy. He's a puppet, which means that every time he makes a mistake, no matter how drastic the consequences, he gets to try again. Maria Trulio, professor at Penn State University who specializes in Italian literature, helped me a lot with my research for this video. there's something in particular she said that I feel I really have to share. In her words, literature in general is a form of consolation in fantasy, just as Geppetto has a painting of a fireplace and kettle on his wall. It gives us what we don't have in reality. Pinocchio is the story of an indestructible child. To me, that made everything click. It made all the ridiculous violence instantly meaningful. Pinocchio endures all the cruelty of the real world. He's put in mortal danger. His lack of education lands him in real trouble, and the adults around aren't always willing to help. But here's the thing, he never stays dead. That's the fantasy of Pinocchio. Why there's something strangely romantic about all this violence. As another scholar, Perry Class, put it, he's the child that always comes back. At the end of the story, when Pinocchio becomes a real boy, his puppet body is left behind. He looks at the empty husk of his former self and laughs. How funny I was when I was a puppet, and how happy I am now that I am a good little kid. That's the last line of the story. But there's something that comes after, something that's puzzled Pinocchio scholars for ages. An ellipsis, a mysterious ... Collodi never explained what it meant. Perhaps he was leaving room for a sequel. Maybe it was just a device to set a tone. Or maybe he's telling us that Pinocchio's feelings in this moment are bittersweet, that there's something sad about leaving his old body behind. I personally like that last reading a lot, because I imagine it captures the complicated feelings that come with growing up. When Pinocchio becomes a respectable, proper boy, he dies one more death. He's reborn in a new body, one that's able to grow, mature, and presumably die for real. Pinocchio learns through experience. He transforms, even when that transformation is painful. Through all of his trials, all of his deaths, he understands the world a little more. I think, in a way, that's what happens when anyone matures. You slowly become a new version of yourself and gradually leave your old self behind. It's the ellipsis at the end of the story. A celebration, but also a mourning, as Professor Trujillo puts it. Growing up is a kind of death. Pinocchio, the indestructible boy, just got to do it as many times as he needed. When you look at the context behind Pinocchio, the weirdness of it all almost starts to make sense. Carlo Collodi was really passionate about improving literacy among Italian children. That's why education is a huge part of the story. Pinocchio was punished all the time for ditching school. He ended up dying because he kept falling for scams. In the story, becoming a real boy also means getting educated. I might not be as blunt as Collodi, but I do have to agree with some of his ideas here. Learning a skill can help you express yourself or understand the world better. Like Pinocchio, getting educated can sort of make you a new person. It can also be really difficult. If you want to learn a new skill, how can you be sure you're learning from a reputable source? And with so many options out there, how do you even find the right skills to learn? Where do you even start? You probably saw it coming a mile off, but this is the part where I talk about Skillshare. Just give me a chance, I promise this is relevant. Skillshare has to be one of the most accessible ways to learn pretty much anything. That's because it's more of a community than a school. It's a platform that creators use to share what they know with you. I'm talking actual professionals making online courses on any skill you can think of. If you like my writing in these videos, that's partly because of Skillshare. Some years back, I took a course called the Creative Writing Bootcamp by Mila Goldberg. She's written multiple best-selling novels and has received not just the Penn Award, but the Carnegie Medal as well. Along with practical advice on how to organize your thoughts and get started writing, she also teaches you how to find your inspiration. In one lesson, she explains where ideas come from. In another, she basically tells you to eavesdrop on strangers as a creative exercise. One of my favorite lessons, after you've spent some time connecting with your own imagination, is about branching out and writing what you don't know. If there's a skill you want to learn, Skillshare is just a very, very good way to get started. I hope you'll check it out. It'll cost you literally nothing if you go now, because the first 500 people who use our link or scan the QR code on screen will get access to everything Skillshare has to offer for free. 1 whole month of access to professional courses from other creators. If it's not for you, cancel and never pay a dime. But at least give it a shot. I think at least you'll really love this course. Again, click the link in the description or scan the QR code to get started for free. Anyway, that's all for this one. Thanks for watching and keep making stuff up. I'll see you next week. Bye.